You know when you use something like ChatGPT and it just gets it? It seems to know exactly which words in a sentence matter the most. How does it figure out that crashed is all about the market and not some other random word? Well, the answer is this really clever idea called the attention mechanism, and that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the big problem AI was facing. Then we'll use a super simple analogy to make it all click. After that, we'll peek inside the actual recipe, discover what makes it so powerful, and then wrap it all up with a mental model that you can take with you.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Why did we even need this whole attention thing in the first place? Well, it all comes down to a really basic truth about how we use language.
I mean, think about it. If you hear the sentence, "The market crashed because of global news," your brain instantly knows the action is crashed and the subject is market. You connect those dots without even trying. The other words, they're important, but they're kind of like the glue. The real challenge for AI was figuring out how to make those same kinds of connections on its own.
So that's the million-dollar question, right? How on earth does a machine learn to have this kind of selective focus? The answer, as you've probably guessed, is the attention mechanism. And it's actually way more intuitive than it sounds. So before we get into any of the technical stuff, let's use a really simple analogy. Deep down, the attention mechanism works a lot like searching a database, and that search has three main parts. First up, you've got the query. This is basically your search term. For whatever word we're looking at right now, the query is that word asking the rest of the sentence, hey, what here is relevant to me? Next up, you have the keys. You can think of these like the labels or the index on every piece of information in the sentence. The query is going to go around and check all these keys to find the best match. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the value. Once our query finds the key that it's looking for, the system grabs the value that goes with it. This is the actual good stuff, the information from that word that gets used. So this is the main idea to lock in your head. For every single word a query is sent out, it scans all the keys in the sentence to see what's related, and it pulls back the most important values. That's it. That's the core idea. Okay, so we've got the general idea down. Now let's pull back the curtain just a tiny bit and see how this whole database search idea gets written down as a formal recipe or, an equation. Whoa, okay, I know what you're thinking. That looks intense. But seriously, don't worry about memorizing it. This is just the fancy, formal way of writing down the exact same search we just talked about. See? There's our Q, K, and V, our query, key, and value. But what's really cool is how we can just break this whole thing down into three simple logical steps. First, we figure out what's relevant. Second, we turn those relevance scores into percentages. And third, we mix all the information together. Let's take a quick look at each one. All right, step one, measure relevance. This is that Q-K transpose part of the equation. If our query word is crashed, the model literally compares it to the key of every other word, market, global, news, and spits out a raw similarity score. A really high score means a really strong connection. So now we've got these raw scores, but they're kind of messy. That's where this thing called the softmax function comes in. It's just a clever bit of math that takes all those messy scores and turns them into a clean set of percentages that all add up to a perfect 100%. It tells the model exactly how much attention it should pay to every other word. And finally, this is where the magic happens. The model creates a brand new, much smarter representation of our original word. It does this by blending the values of all the other words, weighted by those attention percentages we just calculated. It's a new mix, an intelligent cocktail of information from the most important parts of the sentence. So, we have this clever recipe. But so what? Why was this such a game changer for AI? What is its real superpower? This right here, this is the night and day difference. Before attention, older models had to read a sentence, one word at a time. Seriously. And they'd often forget what was at the beginning of a long sentence by the time they got to the end. Attention completely changed the game. It lets the model look at every word and its relationship to every other word, all at the same time. It gets the whole picture instantly. And believe it or not, it gets even more powerful. Transformers don't just do this once. They run this whole attention process many times in parallel, which is called multi-head attention. Think of it like having a whole team of experts reading the sentence at once. One expert is looking at grammar, another is looking at what the words mean, and a third is looking for connections between words that are far apart. It's an incredible way to learn different things all at once. Okay, we've gone through a lot of detail, so let's zoom out. What's the one big idea you should really walk away with?
It really boils down to this. Attention isn't just about focusing. It's the system that lets the model actually understand and measure the relationships between all the different words. It's how it builds that complex web of meaning.
And it all fits perfectly into our final, super simple mental model. If you remember nothing else, remember these 3 steps. The model will find relevant information, it will assign importance to that information, and then it will combine it all into a new, richer understanding. Find, assign, combine. That's the heart of it.
And that kind of leaves us with this really big, fascinating question. We've built a way for machines to find and weigh relationships in data at a scale we can't even imagine. If this is just how they're starting to learn how to focus, what patterns, what connections will they eventually see that are totally invisible to us?